Political and ecological globalization and their impact on climate change.
For our first perspective, we chose political globalization and its impact on climate change.
The United States has had a great influence in creating new policies to reduce climate change. One example of this is global coalitions. The U.S. joined these coalitions with new policies, which then sparked other countries to create new policies that have been limiting carbon emissions and regulating them across the globe. However, problems arrived with transnational corporations and the global economy. These regulations were hurting business, which led to a backlash. The U.S. then left the Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement, causing these new regulations and policies to be lessened or to fail. This once again spread to other countries across the globe. As a result of indecision, the world has been back and forth in trying to find a solution to carbon emissions, causing a stagnation.
The endangerment finding, which helps the EPA regulate greenhouse gas emissions, has recently been challenged by President Trump. Without this, the EPA has no power to regulate emissions from things like power plants, oil wells, and etc. U.S. companies may still, however, be required to change their policies, as many European nations and other foreign markets are making aggressive moves to regulate carbon emissions due to climate change. This can lead to an era of political tension and slow efforts to fix climate change in the U.S.
China's lack of emission policies. While the U.S.'s stance on gas emissions has a large impact on that of others, China's lack of gas emission policies are cause for over a quarter of total carbon emissions annually. Despite signing the Paris Agreement, they have been steadily increasing their carbon output and continuing to up their reliance on coal power, the number one polluter in the energy industry, in a time where most other nations are shutting down their own power plants. Without China's cooperation, the international fight to keep global warming to a minimum will prove difficult to nearly impossible. The second perspective we chose is ecological globalization and its impact on climate change.
The Arctic ecosystem is considered a carbon sink, which is something that stores more carbon than it releases into the atmosphere. These are extremely important to the environment because without them, there would be far too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Carbon in the soils of the Arctic is being released into the atmosphere due to the increasing issue of global warming. The melting permafrost releases methane and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, only furthering global warming. This environment is only in the Arctic, however, this affects the entire world. The permafrost has been acting as the carbon sink, holding it in the ground, but due to rising temperatures, the frozen ground has started to melt, resulting in carbon being released into the atmosphere, further worsening the effects of the climate change.
The recent decrease in biodiversity has also created severe consequences. The destruction of natural ecosystems and environments like coral reefs have destroyed natural protection from storms. Additionally, it has created erratic weather patterns by changing currents. In the U.S. alone, this can be seen from hurricanes that have hit both Louisiana and Florida, causing much destruction and death. Furthermore, the decrease in wildlife populations has also had dire consequences. Wildlife populations like bees have a great impact on agricultural industry. Bees are required for processes like pollination, which is a necessity for plant reproduction. As a result of their dwindling population, growing crops has become much harder. This then affects the global economy negatively and causes food insecurity to become a more prominent issue across the globe. Currently, we are at a critical point in which, if we do not fix our mistakes, the damage will be irreversible. However, the topic is still heavily debated and little action is being taken once again, causing the process to stagnate.
The clean energy movement's impact on the environment. Despite the current focus on the unsustainability of fossil fuels for long-term use, the so-called clean energy alternative is equally as unsustainable. Wind turbines, solar panels, electric vehicles, and storage batteries use 17 rare earth metals, as well as silicon, cobalt, lithium, and manganese, all of which are primarily mined through strip mining. Producing just 1 ton of these critical minerals results in 2,000 tons of toxic waste. A single mine moves millions of tons of earth each year, with sharp increases likely as supply deficits of over 100% become a problem in just the next 5 years. Mine hauling trucks alone consume several billion gallons of diesel, resulting in over 60 million tons of carbon emissions on an annual basis.
And finally, our Works Cited page with all our sources for this presentation.